Hi, everybody. How are we all doing on this fine Thursday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are?
Doing great. Hey, this is Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hi,
Hi,
this is
Jack.
Jack. Hi.
Randall here.
Randall.
Hello.
Hey.
Randall!
Hello.
Yay! Hi, Randall.
Hi. What's
Well,
up, Jack? Hey, Matt.
thank you so much,
Hey.
everyone, for coming today. We have moved from the Hex into the space. Thank you to Twitter Spaces and Twitter TV for hosting us in this chat about Wandavision. My name is Jessica Dershowitz. I'm the Digital Features Director at Entertainment Weekly. I'm joined by Chancellor Agard, one of my colleagues here at EW. And we're so excited to talk to you guys today. Thank you
Hey,
again for coming. And
hey,
thank you to, yeah,
Jessica, sorry, can I jump in? Lizzie is texting me to say that she's in here, but she's as a listener, and same with Paul Bettany. So I don't know if you guys can find them and make them a speaker.
uh, hopefully Twitter TV and the Twitter gods can grant them access because I'm pretty sure people in here are going to want to hear from both of them as well as you
Yes.
guys, right?
Yes.
Um, okay, well, while we're getting that sorted out, congratulations, guys. 23 Emmy nominations. That is incredible. Uh, what was your reaction like on Emmys morning? And was it gratifying for you guys to be part of this year where we're seeing a lot more recognition for comic book shows across the board?
It was an incredible morning. This is Matt. Just to see so many colleagues get recognized for their extraordinary work. I mean, everyone who worked on WandaVision worked so hard for years to make this possible. And you obviously can't nominate everybody who worked on the show, though I wish we could have, or I wish they did. But it was a really special morning, and I'm really excited that the show was embraced by so many wonderful people out there. And also it's great to be on Twitter because the conversation around WandaVision when it came out with memes and comments and speculation was just extraordinary, and it just blew us all away. And we were so happy to be in conversation with you when the show was coming out, and happy to be here right now in conversation.
I mean, I'm hi. Hi, this is Chancellor from Entertainment Weekly. I'm curious. I mean, when you guys were making the show, could you guys predict sort of how much sort of water cooler conversation there would be around it on a week to week basis?
Hi, this is Jack. No, I thank you for that question, and I echo what Matt said. Twitter was the way that I was able to gauge fan reaction to the show, and it was like every Friday morning after the midnight drop, that was the first thing I did. I tried to meditate, but really that didn't happen. I just grabbed my phone and immediately started scrolling. Fan reaction. No, I don't think we anticipated with any Marvel project, you expect really excellent fan engagement because it's such a tremendous fan base. But I would say I think we were all surprised by the level of commitment and enthusiasm. And yeah, the memes and the drag brunch and the makeup and the songs, the dances, the everything. It was really felt like a once in a lifetime several weeks there that kind of blew us all away.
It's certainly cool, especially for a show that had so much love for classic TV and paid tribute to it in all of these really creative ways, to have these iconic theme songs that were on Spotify, and people were talking about Agatha All Along as like the song of 2021 in the early months of 2021. Can you talk about working with Kristen Anderson Lopez and Bobby Lopez on creating those songs, and the process of getting those from the ideas in your heads into their brains to what we all saw on screen?
This is Matt again. I went to college with Bobby Lopez many eons ago, and we had great theatrical collaborations in college. And I have early demo tapes of music that he wrote when he was 18 and 19 that I'm holding in reserve to hold over his head at some point just to get money out of him, maybe. That he is brilliantly talented, and then he partnered up with Kristen Anderson Lopez, both personally and professionally, and they're just brilliant. And I knew, when I came on board, Jack had been imagining all these wonderful openings already with her writers, and they had written versions of openings for fun, just of what they might be. And so we reached out to Bobby and Kristen because I knew they love TV. They love TV theme songs, and they're thrilled to jump in, and they're just brilliant, and they're so brilliantly funny, but also they understand emotion and depth, and they were able to create a wonderful mood and a tone. And this was a show that was all about getting that tone right and getting that authenticity about the shows from the past right. And they were just absolutely a brilliant weapon to be able to do that.
I'll open this up to the whole group too. Which one was the most fun to conceive and shoot?
Well, Lizzie here. Hi.
Hi, Lizzie.
We worked it out. My favorite was was filming the 70s episode with while Wanda's pregnant. I think it felt like it got to be equally the most like the physical for the comedy and absurd, but then we also got to start to play with the barrier quite literally a bit more. And I really enjoyed getting to play all the levels that we show in that episode, and then in the following episode when everyone's starting at Sword starting to see what was really going on. And so there were a lot of different versions that we had to shoot, and it was fun to navigate how much we were exposing to either vision or how much we were exposing to the audience. It was a fun line to tread.
I'm curious. I mean, for both Lizzie and Paul, I mean, just take us back to sort of the beginning of this journey with this show. I guess, how did you guys sort of first react when it was pitched to you, and sort of as you guys got into production, what sort of surprised you the most about the show?
This is Paul speaking, Paul Bettany, aka Vision. I was convinced that I was about to be fired, so I was just excited to still have a job. And then when the whole thing was pitched to me, I was like, God, it's a fascinating idea. And then to see it sort of bloom in the hands of Jack and Matt and really become something special has been one of the most sort of creative and collaborative experiences of my my career, and I've loved every minute of it.
Yeah, it was really incredible to see to just be 2 weeks before filming anything and get together and have Matt and Jack have, as almost every episode, maybe with tweaks that were later made, but we had everything in front of us, and we got to, as a company, read through every single script and ask questions and figure out the visual language that we were all going to be participating in. And you don't have that opportunity a lot. From the get-go is a very collaborative experience, and it was it was more confusing for the audience watching at home than it was for us making it. Hopefully.
Jack and Matt, what do you remember of those initial conversations where you were talking with Lizzie and Paul, explaining the arc of the show and sort of where you saw this going and what it was going to dive into?
I was so nervous when they first came in. I think Lizzie, I met you first, and you came in, and Mary and I pitched the whole board. We had this really fabulous writer's room that was just like plastered with art and trying to sort of like, I don't know, have all of the arcs of the show kind of clear, because it was a challenging pitch because of all the sort of twists and turns and left turns and all the meta. So it was really wonderful to invite Lizzie and then Paul and then Randall as well. I will never forget Randall coming in because he wore the most beautiful sweater I've ever seen, and I've been searching for that same sweater for myself ever since. So Randall, we just need a sidebar on that.
Okay.
At a later date. It was
Post
gorgeous.
the link.
So it was the pitch was a lot of fun. I was nervous about it, but then it was always really fun because they could come into this space and see all of the art and all the intention and I was so relieved that they seemed, really on board and excited about it. And like Lizzie said, like it really more than many other experiences I've had, it was such a collaborative experience, and we did feel like a company because there were just so many moving parts to this story. And then I do remember going out with Lizzie for a really fabulous Mexican dinner and just getting really deep into Wanda and what Lizzie's hopes always were for her, and what the like deep down stuff was, and that was just so incredibly fun.
And Randall, I mean, for you, how did it feel to sort of go from sort of the Ant-Man movies to sort of appearing in this on this show as Jimmy Woo, and especially being the audience surrogate?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as soon as I think I had met with Kevin Feige like a week before just to talk about Jimmy Woo and the possibility of bringing him back, and then a week later I get a call saying there's a show that that's for Disney Plus, and they want to bring back Jimmy, and I was just so excited, and I put on my good sweater, and I went up to Marvel and met with Jack and Mary Lavanos, and yeah, they pitched the whole kind of show. I was in that room with all the art on the walls, and I was just so blown away. And also a little confused because it was just so vast, everything they talked about, and but it seemed like a really big swing, and that really excited me, just the fact that they were thinking so outside of the box, and I was just down from day one, from the moment I got the call. And it was great. Yeah, such a great experience.
That leads us into this fan question we got for you, Randall, actually. I mean, looking beyond WandaVision, I guess, are you, for Randall, are you excited to see what's in store for Jimmy in the rest of the MCU? Because I'm super excited to see another MCU character that looks like my dad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I try not to, just from being in this business long enough, I try not to assume anything. So I mean, I hope Jimmy Woo gets to come back, but if not, WandaVision was a great place to leave off that character. But of course, yeah, any opportunity to bring Jimmy Woo back, I'll be down. I'll be down.
Randall, I had so much fun watching you and Kat Dennings as Darcy acting sort of as the audience surrogates. I mean, you guys were viewers in the sense that you are watching from the sword compound what was going on inside the Hex. You guys are, almost taking it in the same way that like Chance and I and everybody who was watching the show on TV did. And at one point, I think there was like a whiteboard in the background with questions on it. And I was like, this seems very specific to like the process that I go through when I watch TV shows.
Yeah.
Where we're all interrogating and sort of theorizing. And as Jack and Matt said before, coming up with theories. Was it fun being that sort of audience stand-in for the show?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't. It actually helped that I wasn't in any of the other eras and in the sitcom kind of in that world, because it was really kind of a big question for me. Like, what is going on over there? I wasn't there when they were taping the sitcom episodes, and unlike Kat, I didn't get to kind of. My character didn't get to exist in that realm. So it was really, I was genuine. I felt like genuinely like intrigued and fascinated and curious and unsure of what was going on in there. So I really did feel like the audience in a lot of ways, and uh, uh, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun for me to finally see the finished product, because when I saw it, I was like, oh, okay. That's when I really, really kind of knew exactly what was going on in Jack's head when she was pitching to me in that room.
It also would have been incredibly unfair if you entered the hex, because you then would have won the Westfield talent show with your card tricks.
That's right. That's right.
So
we early in the writing, we thought about having Randal go in the hex. Like, it seemed really fitting, and then we were like, no, he's kind of, as a character, like his own little time capsule. Like, we don't actually need to put him in the hex to have him be old timey, so we'll just
Yeah,
we'll keep him out.
that's right. That's right.
And speaking of the sitcoms, because I know that Kevin Feige was initially had the idea of incorporating sort of sitcoms into this, but Jack and Matt, I'd love to hear you guys talk about sort of how you then sort of took that initial idea and sort of figured out exactly which eras and shows you wanted to homage and which tropes you wanted to pull on. And
yeah, I mean, it was initially there were sort of like every sitcom was at our disposal when I initially pitched. I was sort of all over the map with, there are all these great workplace sitcoms like Cheers and, Night Court and that kind of thing. And I think in my pitch, I had like a different world piece. Like, I'm like, oh, they're college. Like, let's get it all in there. And then early on, we realized that we had to narrow it down. And it was Kevin who I think was the first to say, family sitcoms. Let's focus on family sitcoms. And then it became, well, what kind of family sitcoms? We thought about Roseanne, and we thought about, the Norman Lear era and more social commentary. And then it became, no, this is Wanda's fantasy. So it's aspirational family sitcoms. And so then at that point, we in the writer's room, we were just like pulling tropes. Like, we had the massive lists of like, what are the tropes for like episodes? Like, there's always a Halloween episode, and there's a new to town trying to fit in with the community type of episode. There's a we got a pet episode, and then the tropes within the tropes. What are the characters? There's the nosy neighbor. So it was a constant examination, almost like, I don't know. At a certain point, it felt anthropological in a way. And then, of course, when Matt came on, and it all sort of ramped up in its sophistication, both because of his facility as a filmmaker, but also he, like no one else, has lived the life of a sitcom kid. So we were just so incredibly lucky with all of that personal history and professional excellence.
I mean, Matt, I'm curious for you. I mean, coming into this, what was sort of the hardest era to bring to life? Because I know you guys sort of shot the first episode in front of a studio audience. You guys used sort of old-timey sort of levers and pulls to sort of move the floating object. Because which era, though, ended up being the most challenging?
Personally and emotionally, probably the 80s, because as Jack said, I grew up as a child actor in the 80s. So this was definitely a whole limited series about Wanda's therapy, but it was also a little bit my own. And we shot a lot of stuff on the Warner Brothers Ranch lot, which is where I shot this show called Just the 10 of Us that was a spinoff of Growing Pains. So I was there, surrounded by the ghosts of my past, but we were there primarily so that we could shoot this amazing sitcom street that's been used for everything from Bewitched to I Dream of Jeannie and so on and so on, Partridge Family. And we wanted to be there among the sort of ghosts of sitcom past as well. So it kind of overlapped strangely with my own life in a wonderful way. And then later, obviously, when I became a director, I directed in a lot of the styles that we were trying to recreate, like the Modern Family. I didn't do Modern Family, but I did shows like it, like Happy Endings and things like that, and so on. So it definitely felt like a trip down memory lane for me, and I know probably for Lizzie too, who grew up on sitcom sets in the 80s as well. So we definitely threw in a lot of Full House into the main title sequence of episode 5, just so she could be in that world a little bit, having a picnic with the family. San Francisco.
I really appreciated that, Matt. It was very funny to be recreating that running sequence and the picnic.
So great, which so we so for me, I think probably the biggest challenge was the first episode, just because it was the first thing we did as a company. So we were all coming together and figuring out how to tackle this really wonderful but really ambitious show together, to create a sense of company, and also to do a deep dive into something that just wasn't familiar to any of us, this idea of a 50s sitcom done in front of a live studio audience. And so that was the hardest one. And we watched episodes, we talked about it. I had a chance to go to lunch with Dick Van Dyke and pick his brain about how they made that show, and brought back some of the sort of good sort of bits of information that we could all embrace. But the biggest thing was that we were going to do it as a live show and do it like a play from beginning to end in front of this wonderful live audience, and have that energy and have the audience affect the performances the same way that they did during the Dick Van Dyke Show. And I know that was definitely a leap of faith for all of us, including the crew, who had, these are brilliant filmmakers, who have worked on giant Marvel movies, all of a sudden trying to remember all the different camera positions for a 3-camera sitcom with very little time to prepare. So it was a lot of fun, and I think a good way to start it.
Lizzie, Paul, for you guys now, with the benefit of hindsight and time, has the one that you considered to the most challenging or the most, interesting to film changed, or is it the same as it was when you were doing it?
Sorry.
You go. You go.
I was going to say that the idea of the live taping, I mean, first off, when you start a job, you're already nervous because it's a bunch of firsts that you have to get out of the way. You're acting in front of the crew for the first time. You're acting with some new people for the first time. And even though we rehearsed, it didn't, that wasn't that wasn't like as comforting as having multiple takes at your disposal. And so I was terrified to do the 50s episode, and then I kept thinking, oh well, if it's terrible, we're just gonna go back and reshoot as much as possible. But we didn't really do that. We only had to do a couple technical things after the live taping, and then that was just the episode. And so that was pretty terrifying. But I do have to say that just filming the Marvel-y sequences where we're back in the MCU world and we're fighting, those will continue to be so challenging because it's you're working with not much, and the stakes are so high, and I can't really do much magical power things of my own. So it was really fun to have the sitcom practical gags that we could interact with, and it does always become challenging to then go into the MCU where it's all imagination, and the stakes are high, and so it is, both worlds are challenging for different reasons.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was really resistant to the idea of doing it in front of a live studio audience, and I have to say it was such a great decision because just as a company, I think we all took a big leap of faith, and you kind of, you'd spent 2 days in production and already you had one episode, and you thought, well, I guess this is the tone then. I think for Lizzie, and Catherine and Matt and Jack, it was just, it really said, well, I guess the die is cast, and it ended up being great.
It was great. We've talked a bit about the online reaction to the show and everyone watching it week by week, which I will also say that I think the weekly model was so good for this because everyone was able to gather, whatever you can call water cooler style in 2021 during a pandemic when we're all, in our houses to talk about it every week. And a thing that I saw a lot of, obviously you guys didn't make this with the knowledge that it would air during a global pandemic, but that it echoed or tapped into a feeling that a lot of people had about escaping a very difficult time or a very difficult experience by looking at nostalgia and going into TV and I rewatched a lot of my favorite old TV shows in the early months of the pandemic, and I know a lot of other people did too. And how did you guys see those parallels sort of playing out in the reaction to the show, and how do you feel about it being part of the way that people talked about grief and navigating this very difficult time as we all did at the beginning of this year?
Yeah, I mean, watching TV especially has always been a particular type of therapy and comfort food for me personally. I mean, there are shows that are attached to certain milestones in my life. Like I had a particularly bad breakup, and strangely, Battlestar Galactica got me through that. Like I remember like lying in bed with my computer turned on its side so I could just like mainline the whole series. And it really helped me. And so I always understood, you know, WandaVision on that fundamental level. And it was, you know, I had been doing I'd been lucky enough to be writing features for Marvel, and that was really a phenomenal experience. But to have this chance to work on a TV show for them and have it be about television, the layers were unending, and it was really it just felt warm and cozy a lot of the time. We were dealing with very heavy subject matter and obviously all of the big, you know, MCU blasty, that layer of it. But the like the warm fuzzies of recreating all of these sitcom scenarios, it just felt great. And it was so much fun to watch these performers be in that space. And you know, Kevin was the one who pointed out the fact that everybody who was inside the hex, inside the sitcom world, were actors who were by and large known for feature work. And the performers that were outside the hex had these robust sitcom resumes, like Randal and like Kat Dennings, and that just always like just tickled me. I thought that was so great.
And Lizzie, for you, I mean, because I mean, the story very much is simply about sort of Wanda's grief and how, and her sort of, this is her way of sort of working through it, I guess. How did you sort of navigate that very, at least from my perspective, it's very challenging sort of emotional territory over the course of 9 episodes?
Well, I think the goal is to not, you know, repeat beats. You're trying to, you know, because I think oftentimes if you're telling a story about grief or trauma and you're in a series, some things can become repetitive. But I think the way Jack and her writers room had structured the show, and also the nature of the mechanism and the device that we use through these sitcoms, it shied us away from ever being repetitive. And every episode, I think my favorite thing about exploring grief and trauma through this show is that every decade represented the phase that Wanda was in. So you can see her go into like extreme denial, and that's also part of the sarcasm of the Modern Family episode, or you know, or depression, or you know, there's just anger. Like there's so many different ways to either pretend something's not going on, or you know, whether it's like kind of blissfully or it's sarcastically. And so there are these tones that I'm not explaining this as well as I wish I could right now, but there are these tones that every decade inherently, as these sitcoms were bringing to this exploration in order for it to not feel repetitive. So it was fun for me. And also, like, I don't know, as an actor, when it comes to, you know, deep sadness and grief, I mean, it's all, I mean, I think we all just like want to explore that a lot. It's just, it's something that I really enjoy a good cry, you know? So it's just about navigating really the arc and how much is revealed at what time or another, and trying to not have repeat moments or repeat beats. I think is the biggest struggle.
And I mean, the next thing, I think, along the same lines, though, for Paul, I mean, I think, and also Jack, I mean, the internet, one thing they really responded to was Vision's line, what is grief if not love persevering? Can you guys sort of talk, I guess, how did you guys, I guess, did you guys expect that line in particular to sort of elicit the reaction that it did?
You go, Jack.
Wait, it's my turn again?
Yes,
I've
go.
been talking too much. Matt, you go, Matt. It's your turn.
No, I mean it's a really good question. I mean that scene is like the heart and soul of the whole show. It's where we see them fall in love, but it's also talking about this delicate dance between love and grief, which is what the whole show is about. And lots of people talk about how it is about loss and about how we try to overcome loss, or if that is even possible. But it equally is about love. You know, it's just about this incredible love story which springs from the chemistry that Lizzie and Paul have and what they've established in the other Marvel movies. I mean, I think they have like 10 minutes together on screen in all of the other Avengers movies, and yet they've created this really indelible impression and a couple that everyone wants to root for. And that particular line, yeah, I didn't expect it to take off, but it doesn't surprise me because it's a beautiful line. And the origin of that line, I think, actually came, and Jack should speak to this, but Paul, I think actually felt like he wanted to say a little bit more in this particular spot, and Jack started to work on what that could be. And Jack, do you want to take over on where the line came from?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So the line is born of many different things. It was, the scene was written beautifully by Laura Donney, and she infused the entire episode with her heart and soul. And yeah, Paul came to me when we were, we had rehearsed the scene. We had been talking about the scene. Lizzie had some thoughts about how she wanted to express grief, which turned into that lovely sort of mini monologue about the waves and about the ocean, and which is just so beautiful and evocative and resonant in her performance. But Paul said that he feels that what Vision is able to do is he's able to sort of distill humanity down to a statement, down to an observation, an insight. And he referenced that gorgeous line in Ultron of a thing is not beautiful because it laughs. And so he sort of charged me with, let's do that kind of thing, which was so overwhelming and kind of devastating as a writer. Sure. I'll put together a line that's going to like be the thing. And I worked on it with our co-executive producer, Mary Lavanos, and with and my assistant was in on those conversations, Laura Monti, who's a talented writer. And I came up with something that was along the lines of, but what I wanted Vision to express is grief is not all darkness. It is not all sorrow. That grief is evidence of the beauty of the love that was there and the love that continues on. And so I had something along the lines of, what is grief if not love surviving? But we kind of agreed that there was something sort of desperate about the word surviving, and it didn't have the warmth we wanted. It didn't have the elegance we wanted. And so Laura Monti, my assistant, came up with the word persevering, and it all snapped into place. And then, of course, under Matt's hand, and these two actors brought it to life in a way that was transcendent.
I really felt there was an opportunity with Vision to do something that doesn't feel preachy, because he's sort of an ingenue trying to figure it out, and he's trying to work out what the biological imperative of grief is. And that was sort of the note that I gave to Jack, and then they all came up with this extraordinary line, and I knew the moment that Jack, texted me the line. I went, "That's it." And I will say that if you look at the edit, what you'll notice is that the line plays on Lizzie and in the edit, and well, it should. And that's actually the thing that is sort of extraordinary about it, is her reaction to hearing this ingenue robot try to give her comfort and in a sort of non-preachy way.
Really is such a beautiful and poignant moment in an episode that has a lot of them. I think that we'd be remiss right now, she's not in this space with us, but to talk about Teyonah Parris and her wonderful, wonderful performance as Monica Rambeau, both outside the Hex interacting with Jimmy and the rest of the Sword team, and then inside with Lizzie and Paul and being part of that world there. But she is also going through a very specific grief journey of her own, grappling with, returning from the blip and becoming part of, like, stepping back into a world that was not the world that she left, and then also dealing with the loss of her mother in the midst of that. Jack, Matt, I mean, I'll open this up to any of you, but can you talk about just like incorporating her story into this as well?
Sure. It was a really special opportunity to to take a character who had appeared in the MCU as a child and then try and figure out who she is as a grown woman. I had been asked to contribute to the Captain Marvel script, and I worked on some of those scenes with young Monica. And I've never had an experience like that, where on a separate property I wrote for the child version and then looked to who is this woman now. And it was just really exciting to sort of dig in and like what, all the time that's passed and what's happened. And we had in the room, under with Mary Lavanos' help and guidance, we had some sense of where her character might be going and sort of the Carol Danvers of it. And that was really helpful and exciting to feel, part of that larger MCU tapestry. But yeah, the design was always that we wanted her emotional arc to be parallel to Wanda's, that as a character, Monica, like one of her defining characteristics is this empathy that she has, that as a child, she was shown aliens and she knew that aliens existed. And she understood, via that experience to always look at any scenario with a 360-degree view, that it's not good guys and it's not bad guys, that it's always shades of gray. And so we wanted her to be sort of armed with that sensibility, but then the idea that she would be walking into this crisis having just lost the most important person in her life, weeks prior. It seems sort of, a particular kind of like cruelty on the part of the writers, but so terrific for the narrative. And Lizzie, I don't know if you want to speak to, that scene between the two of you on the lawn and how much we sort of worked over that scene to unite the two of you and to you're always on the opposite side of this fence from each other, but there's always that inherent understanding.
Yeah, we talked a lot about them being allies in any other situation, that these two women there is a connection between the two of them that you see from the moment they meet in the 60s episode, and you follow it till the end of at the end of the show. And that was just always important to remember. I mean, also even in the pregnancy, that she actually trusts her enough to deliver her children. So as much as she's afraid of the other inside the bubble, these women inherently feel connected and like allies to one another. But yes, we did do a lot of. I honestly, Jack, I just can't remember anything after we saw that.
I just wanted to say one thing, just as about Tiana Paris. This is Matt again. What an extraordinary actress she is. I mean, and just like Lizzie, just like Paul, just like Catherine Hahn, we asked so much of them to be able to go back and forth between these sitcom tones and real dramatic acting, and all of them were able to sort of put their finger on truth and authenticity brilliantly. And we're also fearless, and we're able to go to these incredibly broad and funny places and then turn on a dime into something that would break your heart. And that they were asked so much physically, in terms of doing all this MCU stuff on wires and flying around. And it is just unbelievable for me to imagine finding one actor like that. And yet we had an ensemble full of actors like that, just kind of tonal masters and like able to just kind of get to truth. And Randal also would be able to do all of this if we ever got him on a wire and flew him around. But it just was just like such a pleasure to be a part of a company. And also all of those people, lovely, lovely souls. And, to be able to work with people who are kind and also brilliant, that's a dream. That just makes everything wonderful for everybody.
Yeah, I got to echo that. Like from the top down, everyone was so nice, and I had always heard that a show like in a show when the cast and crew are all nice people, it kind of guarantees that it will not be a hit. Like there has to be at least one bad apple, but this is just like not the case. Everyone was just so lovely and kind and fun to work with, and it became a hit. And for me, it just kind of proves, yeah, no, you could have a joyful experience throughout and make an incredible product that resonates with people, which was very affirming for me.
And now, as we sort of wrap up, we have several more fan questions that we want to get to. And the first one I want to start with is from, I think, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, but at Yonsei Aurora, for Lizzie, did you have any part in I think she means designing or inputting ideas with the new Scarlet Witch suit? And what was your reaction to seeing it for the first time?
The new suit, I think, I think I don't think I had too much input. I think at some point there was like a really mini cape, and now there's a long cape. But I don't know. We there That's kind of above my pay grade. But obviously we're all Matt's a part of this conversation, and then the next director who inherits this costume is part of that conversation. But it's really the costume designer's collaboration with the company that builds these costumes for Marvel.
And the second part of that question, though, was also what was your reaction when you saw the new suit for the first time?
Well, I think I loved it. I think I felt I was worried about ever wearing the headband first off, because that was one of Joss Whedon's things that he told me I was going to have to do, and it ended up I'm like now really in love with this headband because it actually has meaning as opposed to it just being a costume piece. Jack gave it meaning,
Yeah.
and we reinvented this mythic story behind what it meant to be the Scarlet Witch, and so now I get to carry that with me into the next film, and I'm really happy that we like solidified what that actually means in this universe.
This is Matt jumping in. I remember when Lizzie put on the suit for the first time, and we were out at the pop-up base, in this field, not the place where you would imagine doing a costume fitting. We had to smuggle her in there in a cape and everything, so no one would see this top secret thing. And I just remember being blown away. And also, but you're talking about a collaboration. Lizzie was very clear about like, I can't move in certain ways the way I need to with this suit, the way it's constructed. And so we worked together to make it work for the character and for the aesthetic and all of that, but we also needed to be practical to work for filmmaking. And so Lizzie was able to guide us in how we could make it be better. And I do remember the crown, because we were worried about the crown. We were timid, and the earliest designs, it was very faint. It was very small. We thought maybe it would only be made of magic. And eventually we were like, this is the Scarlet Witch, like go big or go home. And it just we made it as big as it needed it to be. And it's fabulous, and Lizzie pulls it off and makes it awesome.
It is awesome. And it was so cool seeing that and building to the end of this, where like she comes into her power and she gets the name. Like she is now, as Catherine Hahn says, you are the Scarlet Witch. Second fan question we have from Twitter is from @RegStacks. And this is for Paul Bettany. They want to know, what was the hardest emotional transition you've had to make while embodying the different versions of Vision? I assume he means over the course of the MCU, but we obviously there's more than one incarnation of Vision in WandaVision specifically, of course.
Oh, well, I have two answers to that. One was playing opposite myself was really tricky. I couldn't learn the scene initially because I was trying to learn it as one thing, and then I realized I had to learn it as two characters. So that was very peculiar, and I've never had to do it, and I doubt I'll ever have to do it again. But also the saying goodbye to Lizzie scene. Jack and I talked a lot about it. She was worried that there was some flaw in the scene, and I didn't think there was, and it went back and forth with Kevin Feige and Matt, and we all talked it through, and then I realized the sort of the culmination for me of Red Vision in this show was Pinocchio. Was I'm a real boy now, and there was a real opportunity to have this famous 70s panel of Vision crying, and it says even an android can cry, and he's got a tear coming down his cheek, and sort of we talked about it, and everybody sort of agreed that would be a lovely ending for Vision, but I found the whole thing peculiarly and embarrassingly emotional, ending that. So I guess for me that was it.
It was so great. If this is Jack jumping in, the when Paul brought that up to me, that panel, because the not every actor is that sort of up for the comicness of it and up for the emotion and like the big feels and the big sort of dramatic. And it was just so fun to have like the synthesis in that moment that Paul like came to me with the like, let's do this, let's do this big comic book moment, but also it's such a weepy, emotional, like in all the way in your heart thing. It was, I don't know, I feel like it was one of those moments that felt really indicative of the larger show, that we were always in touch with the comics and in touch with the IP and the fans, and never lost sight of that. But we were trying to make everybody cry. We all wanted to cry together.
Paul, it's funny you mentioned that Vision comic book panel, because I think that was actually the title of our recap for the finale, was "Even an Android Can Cry," inspired by that scene specifically, where he says like, "I've been a voice, who knows what I'll be next." But for the next question we have is from at Kiki's MCU, and this is for Lizzie, Paul, and Randall. For everyone with returning characters, were there ways in which you got to experiment and personalize your role, and how would you compare it to your past experiences filming for the MCU?
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Well, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Jimmy Woo was pretty much a kind of was a really comedic character, and one thing that Jack and I talked about early on was, to flesh him out a little more, and one thing that was important to me was to show that he was really good at his job, and I think we got to really see that here in WandaVision, and on top of the fact that he's just a way better magician than he was in Ant-Man and the Wasp. But it just felt like you just got to see a lot more sides to this guy.
The runner of Jimmy always like trying to connect and share and being misunderstood. Yeah. I think I put because in Ant-Man, when you and Paul Rudd have the moment when he thinks you're asking him to dinner, and so we put a little beat like that for you, and you were like, what if that's a runner? What if we he keeps getting into that scenario, and we in the room we were like, yes, let us write a million of those moments for Jimmy.
That's right.
Well, similar to Randall, I felt like I got to play with more sides of Wanda through this, especially her playful, loving side, and I don't discredit the other arcs because I didn't have really that wasn't relevant in the story that we were telling in the other films. You really, when you're in an Avengers film, as honestly opposed to one of the other franchises like a Doctor Strange or an Ant-Man, there's just so many characters, and so you really are aware of your economy of space. And so I was just really grateful that we could show Wanda being like loving and nurturing and playful, and similar to what Matt said as well, that it's a show about grief, but it's about love, and I was really grateful that we got to show that side of her.
For me, I've always found Marvel to be incredibly collaborative, and sort of weirdly so. I was really surprised when they first came up and said, "Hey, what do you want to do next, and where do you see your character going?" But just to sort of reiterate what Lizzie just said, we'd found a lane for both of us to be in, which was sort of unique to the Marvel world. But in this, we had so much more bandwidth and so much more space to to be involved and to do stuff, and so it was an extraordinary experience, I think. For me, this whole journey has been the job that just keeps on giving. I could never have imagined that it would end up in a a TV series for me and Lizzie. I mean, it was it's been really wonderful creative experience.
And it's been so great for all of us who got to enjoy watching it. Last fan question. This is from Agatha's Control. Is that actually Catherine Hahn? Who can say? But the question is, where would you like to see the story of the Scarlet Witch go in potential future projects? Lizzie, I know that we've got Doctor Strange coming up as well, but if there's anything that you guys personally would be intrigued about, or where you want the story to go.
That is honestly so hard for me to answer after doing a whole other movie. What I do appreciate with Wanda in the comics throughout all the decades is never being able to define her and her role. She's not necessarily a hero or an antagonist. She's an anti-hero. And so the opportunities with her are there's it's vast. There's a lot of ways to use her, and I feel like ways that we can continue to keep the audience on their toes. And so I just hope that we get to continue to do that. I feel like WandaVision was really a special opportunity to round her out and make her kind of like this question mark for everyone of what does she do with this new information as she starts to gain more confidence and autonomy from what is the Avengers. And so it's exciting, and I feel like there's lots of opportunity of where she can go.
For me, I'm frightened to say anything in case it doesn't happen. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I think this is a great place to end things because we've been here for a while. Thank you again to Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, Jack Schaefer, Matt Sheckman, and Randal Park for joining us today. And thank you to everyone else for listening. As a reminder, all 9 episodes of WandaVision are available to stream on Disney Plus right now. And please make sure to check out all of our coverage on EW of WandaVision. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
This was so much fun, guys. Thank you again for stopping by.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.